Well, this video is for people who are not very familiar with what's going on under the hood in the engine compartment, and they really don't know much of what to do. So I'm not going to go into great detail. You're not going to be able to give it a tune-up or change the oil at this point. This is just some basics. So to start off with, I'm going to start with the radiator. Here's the radiator. Now, a lot of cars have a radiator that do not have a radiator cap. And a lot of newer cars are, all they have is a reservoir connected to the radiator, but it's still the same thing, where you put antifreeze into the reservoir and fill it up to whatever the fill line is. And antifreeze or water, or a mix of both, it's okay. So for the cars that do have a radiator cap, when you fill the radiator, you want to be very careful when you take off this cap if the engine is hot, because there could be pressure built up and there could be antifreeze that will burst out and could burn you. So you just press down on the cap and be careful in turning it. Give it some, as it wiggles here, let's see if it's bubbling over or if some fluid comes out. If the engine is real hot, it probably will. And so you press it and turn it again, and be careful when you're taking off the cap, and just check what your fluid is. And you can check it when the engine is running or when the engine is hot or is turned off. Okay? And you can put antifreeze and or water in it when the engine is running or when it's turned off. Now the next thing we got is checking your motor oil. You check your motor oil when the engine is turned off. Okay? So you have a dipstick. Now here you just pull it out, you wipe it off, and you stick it back into the tube, push it all the way down, and then pull it back out again. And then you check what it shows. Now you'll notice on this one there's 2 notches there, and those notches are showing what the level is. The top notch is for full, and the next one is it's a quart low. And if you're constantly having to put oil in, you've got a problem, you've got a leak, or you've got an engine that's burning oil because the rings are wore out. So, alright, you put that back and put it away. When you put the oil in, there is a cap on top of the engine somewhere, and you just twist that and it comes off, similar to that. And you put the oil in right there, into the engine. Now you might need to use a funnel so it doesn't go pouring all over. So you put the oil in when the engine is turned off. Now the next thing you got, if you have an automatic transmission, you've got a dipstick for that too. And so you check the transmission fluid when the engine is running and the transmission is in park. And you should always put the emergency brake on so it doesn't, there's no chance of it running you over, someone in there playing with it or something. So you pull it out, wipe it off, put it back down into the tube, and pull it out again and see what it's showing. So again, like this one has all these marks here. The top hole is full. See all those little holes there? So if you need to put fluid in, you put transmission fluid and you put it into the tube where the dipstick was. And you're going to have to use a funnel. So put the funnel there and put in your quart of transmission fluid. If the fluid is real low, you got a leak there too. Now there are other problems that can cause you to lose fluid, and if you're burning white smoke, that's a possibility. Now we come over here to the master cylinder for the brakes. If you have a standard transmission, you'll have a master cylinder also for the clutch. But this car has this car does not have a standard transmission, but the master cylinder for the clutch and the master cylinder for the brakes, they both will use brake fluid. Never put anything else in there. Don't put water or transmission fluid or anything else, because it could ruin the seals inside the master cylinder. And, you know, fill it up as high as you can. You can only fill it so high. Okay, so we come over here to the battery. Now, you're not going to get a shock or hurt if you touch the battery posts. Nothing's going to happen. It's not like house current is. So, although you don't want to lay any kind of metal across here, because then it will get hot and you can end up blowing up the battery. Because that's the negative side. You got a positive side. With metal touching it, it'll spark and it could blow up. Now, if you're going to have your car jumped because your battery's dead and you need jumper cables, make sure you connect them properly. The positive jumper cable goes on the positive post on your car, and the same thing, it connects to the positive post on the good car. And make sure you put the negative battery cable to your negative clamp on your car and on the negative clamp on the good car. Now, you can connect it to, on your car, you can connect it to the jumper cable to some kind of metal on your engine, and that'll actually give a better flow of current. So now, as we're going along, the next thing we've got, I've already told you about the reservoir for the antifreeze if you don't have a radiator cap. And we come to the reservoir or container for the windshield fluid. You can put water or Windex in here, same thing. It's going to squirt out and wash your windows. Okay, here we come to the reservoir for the power steering. You put power steering fluid in here. You take off the cap here and you can check what the level is and just make sure it's full. Okay, mine's a little bit low there, so I'll put some in. And you turn that on. Now, that takes power steering fluid or transmission fluid. It's the same thing. Okay? Some cars have their reservoir for the power steering mounted here on the engine, and there is a power steering pump. My power steering pump is down over there. Now we come to the alternator. The alternator keeps the battery charged. Okay, and it produces current for all your electrical components, your radio and so on, when the engine is running. If that goes bad, then it's going to drain the battery. The battery's going to run down because you're running the lights and so on. And that's one thing to look for. You also want to check the hoses to see if they're hard, if they have any cracks or bubbles in them, because that means it needs to be replaced. You got your fuel line. Some cars have metal fuel lines going up the fuel to the fuel injectors, but some have these rubber fuel lines, and you've got to be careful in checking those. Check those every 4 to 6 months, because those get hard and cracked and they can spray gasoline onto your engine and they can end up causing a fire, and you definitely don't want that to happen. You've also got the air filter. Now, this is the container for the air filter, and it can be located anywhere. Here, just depends upon where the manufacturer decided to put it. And have that checked every 6 months or so, depending upon how much driving that you do. So, there are cars that have their engine mounted sideways like this, and this is a front wheel drive car. And there are cars that have the engine mounted going this way, and that's a rear wheel drive car. But they're all basically about the same for all the components. And I hope this has given you some basics on what to know and what to look for. And we look forward to my next video.